Hello and welcome to this screencast on Eduonix. My name is Ilya and today we are going to talk about setting up and using Minitest in Rails 5 application. So when talking about testing, of course you have multiple solutions available, and probably the most popular is RSpec. Also we have Cucumber, but well, today I decided to tell you about Minitest, and that's the default solution that comes with Rails 5. So you don't need to perform any setup, you have Minitest out of the box. Well, testing is really important step when developing various applications, because this way you can understand if some of your, for example, refactoring broke some part of your application, or well, maybe by updating some gem you accidentally broke something. And well, also when you start writing your tests for your application, you can easily determine which parts of your code require refactoring at all. So the source code for this screencast is available at the following GitHub repo, so you can just visit it, and here is this Minitest folder, and you can take a look at the application and how it looks like. So to start off, let's open our terminal and say Rails new Minitest, for example. That's the name of our application, and press enter. Of course, it's going to generate a new Rails application for us, and in this video I'm using Rails 5.1.4, and well, remember that version 5.1 has brought lots of different changes for us. And well, for example, we have Capybara out of the box already available, we have Selenium out of the box, and those two gems, they are used to write system tests to simulate users' behavior, so I really recommend upgrading to Rails 5.1 as soon as possible. So now let's proceed to this application and see what's inside the test folder. So here is this test folder that was generated for us by Code Generator. And by the way, if you don't want this folder to be created for you, so if you don't wish to use Minitest, you can simply provide this T flag to mark that you don't want to utilize the default testing suite, and in this case you are free to configure your application, well, anything you like. So you can stick with RSpec or you can stick with Cucumber, for example. So inside this test folder there are a bunch of folders that are pretty self-explainable. So for example, here are tests for controllers, tests for helpers, for mailers, integration tests, and so on and so on. Also there is the test helper file, which is basically this main file that contains all the configuration for our mini tests. So here you can require some additional libraries, maybe here you can provide some configuration. Also there is a new file called application system test case. And well, by system tests I mean tests that simulate users' behavior using a tool like Selenium, for example. So Selenium is an adapter that allows you to open a browser and programmatically perform some actions on a user behalf. So this way you are testing your application from the user's perspective. And so this is a new file and this new helper, and also there is a new directory called system that can contain all the system files. By the way, system tests are not run by default, so when you say, for example, rake test, they won't be run. So you will need to say rake test and then system to be able to actually run those tests. By default, Minitest relies on assertions, so they can be written in the following way. So you can assert that something is equal to some expected value maybe, and there are a bunch of assertions available. You can find them in this Rails guide. So there is a quite long list of all available assertions, including the ones that are specific for Rails. So be sure to browse them. Also, of course, you can write your tests in a form of specs. If you've come from RSpec world, that's possible as well. So here is an example. Well, in this video we won't be using this kind of writing tests, but you can surely stick to it. And also another available option is using a third-party gem called Minitest Rails that provides some integration for Minitest. But I don't really think we need to utilize this gem for our current setup. Now let's do some configuration, and the first thing that I'd like to change is this Selenium. Why? Well, because Selenium is quite slow adapter, and so by adapter I mean some tool that allows us to test user interactions. And so what Selenium does is it literally opens a browser for you, and you can see all the interactions in the real time, which is quite slow. And so instead of using Selenium 2, we can stick with Poltergeist. So Poltergeist is a Phantom.js driver that can also be utilized. So to stick with Poltergeist, let's open the gem file and replace this line Selenium WebDriver with Poltergeist. Then simply say bundle install. Then let's copy this line of code here, place it right here, and say Poltergeist, and remove this thing here. I love Poltergeist because it is truly headless, meaning that the browser will not open in real time, but well, it is required to have Phantom.js installed on your PC, so follow this link here, go to the download section and basically download the version that works for you. One thing to note, however, is that Phantom.js project seems to be abandoned for quite a while, so there is a new issue here called Future of Poltergeist, and people here are talking about what to do next. But for now, I think that Poltergeist still is a viable choice, and so, well, I really recommend trying it out. In the end of this video, we will see Poltergeist in action. Yeah, let me actually replace it like this. Okay, so the next thing that I'd like to do is introduce a tool to measure the coverage of our tests. So by coverage I mean how well our application is tested in general. So for example, we may have tests that only cover our modules, that test our models, but well, they don't, for example, test our controllers, so maybe our routes. And so to do this we can utilize a tool called SimpleCov. So that's a code coverage tool for Ruby, and it is quite easy to use actually. To start using it, let's copy this gem and go to the gem file, place it to the group called test, say require false, then do bundle install again, and then let's simply copy those two lines of code. One thing to note is that they have to be placed right here at the very top of our file, because otherwise SimpleCov may not work properly. So as you understand, this line is going to boot SimpleCov, and it is going to check the coverage of all our tests. we will see SimpleCove in action as well. SimpleCove is going to generate a report in HTML format, and this report will be placed inside the coverage directory. I don't think we need to track it with Git, so I'll place the following line inside gitignore file. Now I think we can go ahead and generate a new module and later write some tests. I'm going to say Rails DB migrate, and also Rails DB test prepare to prepare the database for us. So this is going to create a separate database called test. Later, when you apply new migrations, don't forget to apply them to the testing database as well by providing this Rails env option. Now let's go to this modal and say validates body presence true. And so now I want to write a very simple test to make sure that the post without a body is invalid. So here is the example of a test, and let's for example say post should not be valid without a body, like this. And for example we can say post equals to post new, and post valid, but well, this assert method is going to check that this argument, in this case post valid, returns true. And so let's try to run this test now and see what happens. So of course we are getting this F here, as you see, which means that the test fails, and that's quite explainable because our validation fails. So instead of saying assert here, I actually wish to check that post valid is false. And there is a method for that called a refute. It is going to make sure that the argument returns false, not true. Let's run it again. Yeah. And by the way, note that it says coverage report generated for Minitest, and that the coverage is 96%, which is quite nice. We can, I think, go to our coverage directory and open this file and see that our coverage is quite fine. Yeah, so here we see that our files well, especially this module is covered by some tests, which is quite nice. So the same can be done for post that actually contains a body. So post should be valid with a body, and we say assert. But here we introduce some code duplication, so let's do the following. Let's say setup, copy this line of code, place it here, and make this variable an instance variable. Use it here, and then say body. So this setup is a special method that will be called before our tests, so it does some initial setup before the tests are actually run. So this way we are getting rid of some code duplication. So we are setting a body here, that's quite okay, and saying that the post should be valid now. Let's run our test again, and so we see that there are two green dots, meaning that we have two tests and both of them succeed, which is quite fine. And as you see, we are spending less than 1 second to run all those tests, which is quite fast. Before wrapping up, let's also make sure that our system tests work as expected. So while pausing this video, while pausing the recording, I have created this posts controller, which is really simple. Also, I have created two views. One is index that renders all these posts using the post partial. And also I have created this new post view that contains a form to actually create a new post. And lastly, I have created two routes like this. So that's a very simple setup. So now let's try to make sure that the posts can be created properly. And to do that, I have created a posts test file inside this system directory. And now we need to explain to our Minitest how to actually simulate users' behavior. And to do that, we're going to use a special tool called Capybara. So Capybara is acceptance test framework that allows you to perform various tasks. For example, you can visit pages, you can click links, buttons, you can fill in forms, attach files, query for some selectors, and much more. So let's now utilize Capybara inside our system tests, and the first thing I like to do is I like to visit this new post URL, and then I'd like to check that it contains the proper h1 header new post. So I'm going to say assert selector for that, say that h1 has to contain this new post text, and then let's fill in our form. So as long as I'm using this form with helper that was introduced quite recently, I cannot say simply body anymore, because form with does not generate any IDs for the fields anymore, and therefore I must say post body like this. Then let's say with. I think let's generate a local variable for that. This is my test post, something like that. Let's say body here, and then we need to set an assertion. Yeah, by the way, we also need to say click button create post like this, of course, to submit the form. Then the user will be redirected to another page, to the posts path specifically, and we need to make sure that this page contains the body of my post, and to do that I'll need to set yet another assertion. In the simplest case, this assertion will look like this, saying assert text body. So Minitest will search for a text on the page with the following value. And now we can go ahead and run this test by saying rake test system. Once again, remember that by default system tests are not being run, are not being executed, so you must specify them manually. And as you see, it has started a server on a separate port, not on port 3000. And it has finished in like 4 seconds, in nearly 5 seconds, so system tests are much slower than other types of tests. But all in all, everything is quite okay. So it says this, it displays this green dot, which is quite nice, and also our test coverage has increased. So it says now 97%. I think we can actually open our maxi test coverage and once again open this index, and it is green, so our post controller is tested nearly 100%, and all other files are tested as well. In the upcoming screencast we will talk more about Minitests and using it in real world. But if you'd like to learn more about test-driven development in general and see more examples and more detailed explanations, then you can refer to our beginner's guide to test-driven development on Eduonix. So this course lasts more than 4 hours and contains various information about test-driven development, about how to test models, controllers, how to write integration tests, system tests, and other examples. So feel free to enroll for this course. For now, I thank you for staying with me and see you really soon.